Hello and welcome to English for You. We're your hosts Seb and I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. I've completely forgotten your name. What was it again?
It's Mike. It's me. Hi, Mike. Hi, Seb. It's Mike. Don't you recognize me?
Oh my god, I'm so sorry. I really struggle to put names to faces. Yes, I know you're Mike. We've done a ton of episodes together, but I'm really bad at remembering names, really bad at remembering faces. I feel like this is something that a lot of people struggle with.
Okay. Yeah, I think I've heard about something like this. I think it's called face blindness, and it actually has other names too. Yeah, I mean, it's not really you, or it's not like you're not trying to make me feel bad because you don't recognize me. It's a problem with your brain and how your memories and faces and how your brain kind of joins all that information up. So for me, I can see you, and of course, every day of the week, I'll know, hey, that's Seb, but I guess for you with face blindness, this is a bit of a challenge sometimes.
Yes, there's been times that I will have a whole conversation with someone who clearly knows me, and I have no idea who they are. So I just, ask open questions, smile politely. Sometimes it's just too awkward to ask somebody what their name is. Anyway, I'm glad we got over this, but I think we should talk more about face blindness, and that's actually what today's article is going to be all about. So let's check it out.
Reading.
What's in a face? Everything or nothing. Some people are good at remembering people's faces. Others aren't so good. A few people, however, have face blindness. In some cases, this means they can't even recognize themselves in a mirror. People with a minor degree of face blindness often can't recognize faces they're not so familiar with. However, those who suffer from a more severe form are unable to recognize even their closest friends. This can lead to social anxiety, since being unable to recognize people often leaves sufferers embarrassed. It may even cause other people to feel upset. They may believe the sufferer doesn't consider them important enough to remember. Luckily, there are several strategies people with face blindness can employ. They can focus on other clues to help them remember people, such as voices, clothes, and hair. Many sufferers think it's helpful to be open about their condition. They can also try to learn interesting details about people. This shows that even though the sufferers may not remember their face, they care enough to memorize other things.
Okay, so our article begins, some people are good at remembering people's faces. Those people wouldn't be me, definitely not me, but some people are very good at it.
That's right. But then it says, of course, others aren't so good. So you might be one of the lucky ones who is very good at remembering people's faces. You meet someone for the first time, and then maybe you don't see them for weeks, months, or even years later, and then you will still recognize that person. You run into them in an airport 5 years later and go, hey, aren't you Charlie who I met at a party 5 years ago? That would be a very good memory for faces. But as the next sentence says, others aren't so good. So, of course, that means others aren't so good at remembering people's faces. Yeah, people like Sam.
People like me. However, a few people, have face blindness.
Interesting. So often when we talk about blindness, especially when we put something else in front of it, like color blindness or face blindness, we're basically saying that their eyes don't work quite in the same way that most other people's would, that most people would just sort of think is normal or take for granted. So yes, some people have face blindness, and then we read about the really serious cases. In some cases, this means they can't even recognize themselves in a mirror. So if someone holds up a mirror and says, who's that? And they're looking at themselves, they go, I don't know, some guy.
It sounds terrifying to me, to be honest, but I'm sure that they have ways of coping with this. Not everybody with face blindness can't recognize themselves in a mirror, though. The article says people with a minor degree of face blindness often can't recognize faces they're not so familiar with. And I think that this is something that affects me. Say if I go to a party or, go to an event and meet someone and talk to them for 5 minutes, if I see them 2 weeks later, I'm not going to be able to remember who that person is. I'm just going to see them and they're going to be another stranger to me. Anyway, we talked about having a minor degree of face blindness here. Minor is an adjective and it means small or unimportant. Let's look at an example sentence. Rob hurt his leg in an accident, but it's only a minor injury and he should get better soon.
Okay, so that's good. He doesn't have to go to a hospital. He certainly doesn't have to have an operation. Hopefully he can take some medicine, rest at home for a few days, and he'll be fine. If it was a major problem with his leg, then yes, he might have to spend some time in a hospital. And of course, when we use degree in this sentence, we're just basically saying how much of something or an amount of something. So a minor amount of face blindness means that you're just not good at remembering faces. A major degree of face blindness would mean you can't even recognize yourself, and that would be very strange. But even with a minor degree, you often can't recognize faces you're familiar with. If you're familiar with something, you would expect to recognize it, to be able to see it and know what it is. For example, we could say, I'm not familiar with this movie. Can you tell me more about it? I've never seen it before. In fact, I've never heard of it. I don't even know the names of the actors in it. I know nothing about this movie. All right. It says, however, those who suffer from a more severe form are unable to recognize even their closest friends. Okay, so here we would be using the opposite of a minor degree. This would be a major degree or a severe form. A really bad case of face blindness means that people can't recognize even their closest friends, maybe even their mother, their father, their brother, sister. They just don't know these people. That, of course, though, is very unusual, and that's why we use the adjective severe.
And so this can have some big effects on people. The article says this can lead to social anxiety, since being unable to recognize people often leaves sufferers embarrassed. Okay, so we saw this phrase here, lead to, and when one thing leads to another, it causes that thing or it makes that thing possible. We also saw the word anxiety, didn't we?
That's right. Anxiety is being very, very worried and nervous.
Exactly. So this sentence, we also saw a grammar point that we need to cover. We saw that having this condition, having face blindness, often leaves sufferers embarrassed. Now, leave and also find and keep are what I like to call maintenance verbs. That is because we can use these verbs to mean that the object of a sentence, that's the Schultz, was a certain way before, during, or after the subject, Jules, did something to it.
Exactly. And back in our article, we were reading that social anxiety, face blindness, this type of situation can leave people feeling embarrassed. Now, if you're embarrassed, you've done something silly, something kind of shameful, and other people saw you do it, all right? If you're walking down the street and just suddenly fall over for no reason, people might look at you and they sort of start laughing because it was kind of a funny thing to see. And then you would get up, and if you're like me, your face will turn a little red and you kind of want to disappear and go away because you feel like everyone's looking at you, talking about you, laughing at you. I mean, imagine if you go to a party and you meet someone and they know your name and they're talking to you and you've met this person before, and then you say, well, it's great to see you, Dave. And then they go, my name's not Dave, my name's John. You would feel pretty embarrassed about something like that. Now, for people with face blindness, this is a very normal situation, and it wouldn't just happen with that guy Dave that they met one time and got embarrassed because they forgot his name one time. It would happen all the time. So you can see where the anxiety would come from. Absolutely. And it says it may even cause other people to feel upset. Yeah, if I was at that party and I was talking to that guy for 20 minutes and I called him by the wrong name, he might feel a little upset if he doesn't know, especially about my problem remembering faces. If you're upset, you're just not happy, really. You could be angry, you could be sad, you could be worried, you could be scared about something, but we use this adjective in lots of different ways just to basically say someone is not happy with some kind of situation. And if you ask a little more, learn a little bit more, then you'll find out exactly what emotion they're feeling. But if you hear that they're upset, you know that they're just not having a good day. They're not in a good mood. For example, the little girl was upset when her mother told her that she had to go to bed early. She was playing, she was watching her favorite cartoons, she knew she had to go to school in the morning. I don't want to get in bed, says the little girl. She could be crying, she could be angry, who knows, but she's obviously not a happy little girl.
Exactly. So it could be someone who's upset could be very upset, or they could just be, a bit bothered.
A little bit.
Anyway, so moving back to the article, they may believe the sufferer doesn't consider them important enough to remember. Okay, so we talked about why this might make people upset, people not remembering their names. And luckily, you, Mike, weren't too upset when I forgot your name earlier. But some people are. Some people think that it means that someone doesn't care about you when they don't remember your name. So obviously, this can kind of make things even worse. But the article goes on to tell us about some of the ways that we can cope with having face blindness, or the ways that people cope with having face blindness. Could you tell us a bit more about that, Mike?
Yeah, sure. So for people like Seb or other people who have trouble remembering faces, it says, luckily, there are several strategies people with face blindness can employ. Okay, so this is the good news. That's why we see luckily at the beginning. And a strategy is basically a plan, a method, a way of doing things. For example, we want to get the best seats if we want to get the best seats at the concert, we need to come up with a good strategy. Should we get there early to be first in line? Should we get there late and try to run to the front? There are different strategies that you might use to get a good spot in the concert. So what are some of these strategies?
Well, okay, they say that they can focus on other clues to help them remember people, such as voices, clothes, and hair. Of course, like someone's face is obviously very important for recognizing who they are, but there's other things. Like when I hear Mike's voice, for example, I know that that's Mike. You have your own distinctive way of speaking. You have, your Canadian accent and quite a deep voice. So I'm like, oh, okay, I know who's speaking right now. So all of those things, your accent, the pitch of your voice, those are all clues. And a clue is a small piece of information that helps us solve a mystery or a problem. Here's an example sentence for clue. Can you give me a clue about what you bought me for my birthday?
No clues at all.
No clues. Well, my birthday was last week, so...
Oh, well, too bad. I'll have to wait until next year. All right. So what are some of the clues? What are some of the little bits of information that you can use to reach the correct answer? Well, there are things such as voices, clothes, and hair. Yeah, of course. I mean, your voice, right? If someone calls you on the phone, you don't have to see their face. You can often pick up the phone, say hello. They say hi, and then right away, you know who it is. Maybe a person wears a certain style of clothing all the time. Maybe they have an unusual hairstyle or even a different hair color. Those clues can help you recognize the person. So these are, when we say such as voices, clothes, and hair, this is basically like saying, for example, or like. We're giving you a few of the different options or a few of the different ways people can look for these clues. And then it says they can focus, then it says Many sufferers think it's helpful to be open about their condition. Okay. This might help them to avoid feeling embarrassed. If you're open about something, you tell people about it. You don't keep it a secret. You're not shy about it. You say, sorry, I have face blindness, so the next time I meet you, I might not recognize you. Please don't be upset. Please don't be insulted. It's not you. It's me. So, being open about something like that can help you avoid or not feel embarrassed because the other person knows what's going on. So everyone understands the situation. That's a good way too.
It is. It's a very good way. Yeah. It's a good strategy that can help you. So next, the article says, they can also try to learn interesting details about people. A detail is a small or precise bit of information. So details aren't necessarily the most important bits of information in a story or about a person, but they're just, little bits. So imagine you're taking a flight from Taipei to Shanghai. You might fly with China Airlines, your flight might take off at 9 a.m., and you might be flying first class. Those are all details about your flight. They're not actually the most important thing about your flight. The most important thing is that you're going to Shanghai. But those are bits of information about your flight, and so they are details. If you're going to a party, then details about that party might be where the party is, who's hosting the party, when the party is, all of those little things. Here's an example sentence for detail before we move on. Before I decide to join you on your holiday, can you give me some details about where we will be going?
Of course, yeah, sure. You're going on holiday? Sounds interesting, but I want to know a little bit more than that. Give me some details. And it says, next, as we reach the end of our article, if you learn the details about another person, this shows that even though the sufferers may not remember their face, they care enough to memorize other things. So when we use even though here, we're kind of saying this might be true, but other things might be true as well. And sometimes those things are kind of opposite, or you wouldn't expect them to be true at the same time. So I don't remember your face, but I do remember you. I can't sort of pick you out in a crowd and say, that's Dave, but I do remember that this guy, Dave, that I met, he bought a new bicycle and he lives in this part of the world or something like that. I've memorized or remembered those things. I've taken that information and locked it in my brain and I don't forget it. So yeah, that shows that you remember a person.
All right, we still have more to go through on this article, but we're going to pause now and check out our For You chat question. So don't go anywhere.
For You chat.
Okay, so our For You chat question for today is, do you have a good memory? Do you use any tricks to help you remember things? Okay, we know about my memory. How is your memory, Mike?
Well, I think it's okay. It's okay about certain things and not so good about other things. I do sometimes have a problem remembering people's names, especially when I'm at a party and I meet lots of different people. So I do that thing where I try to sort of link their name to something, maybe something with the same letter. That will help me kind of, go to the right direction. So I meet Seb and I find out he lived in Shanghai. So he's Shanghai Seb or something like that. But it doesn't always work. And you often do have to kind of repeat that name in your head a few times. And then also hope you see that person again in a few weeks. Because if you try to remember that clever nickname a year later, sometimes it doesn't work, but tricky. I use those things. I think they're called mnemonics, right? M-N-E.
Right.
It's a complicated spelling, but it's basically one of those tricks that teachers often teach us as well, remembering facts in school. So those sometimes help.
Okay, so you guys can discuss now whether you're good with names, whether you have good memories, maybe you're good at remembering facts, but you're not good at remembering people. Maybe it's the other way around. Maybe you can sing a whole musical after just one listen. You guys discuss that question, and we will join you tomorrow when we'll be learning more about face blindness and the ability to remember faces. We will see you then. Bye-bye.
Vocabulary Review.
Minor. Alex cut his knee while playing soccer, but it was only a minor wound. He recovered in a few days. Familiar. I use Microsoft Word on my home computer, so I'm already familiar with it. Upset. Sarah was happy to take the puppy home, but she became upset when it started eating her shoes. Strategy. The other team has a lot of strong players. We'll need a good strategy to beat them. Clue. Larry didn't say where he was going, but he left a clue when he took his baseball glove. Detail. The movie is good, but I prefer the book. The book has a lot more details.
智慧小补帖
Severe. Anxiety. Embarrassed. Memorize.
以上节目是由活用空中美语制作，活用空中美语杂志，请洽询全国各大书店。如欲索取试听教材，请来电02-2364-4000 02-2364-4000，或上网查询，网址是 www.english4u.net www.english4u.net